you've heard about like sacred geometry, like the way that the flower of life is built sort of, I think, mirrors the way that creation takes place or unfolds. Like first with infinity or a dot, it's just a point, which is basically infinity, because if you're immersed in that point, there's no other space, you're just in the allness. And then the dot basically creates a sphere or a circle around itself. So it's like a circle with a dot in the middle. And that's infinity becoming self-aware. That's when source becomes self-aware. And then it creates a reflection of itself as another circle like this. And that's basically, it also talks about that creates the geometry of light, which in the Law of One also says that light is fundamental to creation. And then it keeps on going. And if you pair it with like the days of creation in Genesis, which is supposedly how it's supposed to mirror also, it's like creating different things, first the galaxies first, then like stars, then animals, and like they're all just different expressions of the one source.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Universe the Game. I'm your host, as always, with you here, Nick Zai, and we've got a special guest appearance by my beautiful golden retriever, Jax. What do you think, buddy? But anyways, today's episode, what are we doing? We're talking to Bruno. If you're gonna like this episode if you enjoy my usual content, because he talks about not the same exact topics, but we're very aligned in expanding consciousness and understanding the nature of reality. That's a lot of what he does. A lot of awakening type material. Yeah, he's great. This is probably my favorite episode so far because I'm shooting this intro after we filmed the podcast. And yeah, definitely in terms of awakening and really understanding what's happening on this planet, this dude, it's great. It's great. So without further ado, actually, one more thing before we start real quick. This episode is brought to you ad-free throughout by one thing, and that's my book, 10 Secrets of Awakening. All right. If you're interested in consciousness, self-realization, and awakening, and if you're wanting to understand the secrets of said materials, check out my book. #1 new release on Amazon. Thank you so much to everyone who's gotten it. And all right, without further ado, actually, let's get into today's episode. Here we are with Indigo Bruno.
Yes, sir.
Today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Existing, living life, enjoying the universe and creation.
Very good. Very good. Super excited to have you here today. And we're going to be talking about many things consciousness. You know, It's incredible how we talk about many of the same concepts overall, but we approach them in a different way. And so I'm just really grateful to have you here on the podcast, and I'm excited to get into it. So today, my question to you is, let's just start off with a big one. What is consciousness to you?
To me, consciousness is subjective experience, the awareness of reality. I think consciousness is just experience itself. Like without consciousness, we wouldn't know that we are existing and experiencing reality. But I think beyond that, it really is everything in the universe, because when you start thinking about how consciousness came into the universe, it's very illogical for consciousness to sort of just spring up out of some unconscious matter, just randomly in biology or in evolution. So to me, like the Law of One and like other religions and other things teach, I think consciousness had to have existed prior to the universe as some sort of God or whatever, and then manifested itself as creation for it to experience itself through different characters as conscious experience.
There it is, folks. The secrets to the universe right there. Just give it to you. So when you see consciousness, or when you say consciousness, are you referring to the awareness that consciousness is aware? Like, because to me, there's two levels. There's awareness, and then there's when you become aware that you're aware. So which one do you see it as, or do you think it's both?
I think it's different levels of it. Like you said, I remember watching your story, and like your dog or like any other animal, I don't think they're aware that they're aware. Like they don't know that they know, but we know that we know. So it's like there's somehow some sort of barrier, maybe not a barrier, but like a switch that happens where you can be experiencing reality, but you don't really know deeply that you're experiencing reality. You're just doing it. You don't know, you're not aware of your awareness. And I feel like for us, we are aware of our awareness. We're self-aware. But I
At least some
still
of us.
think, yeah, some of us. But I still think it's the same consciousness, though. You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't think it would divide or split or whatever.
Yeah, you mean like it all comes from the same source, and it's just in different identities and different bodies and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. So when you think about like the human experience, what would you say entails being a human right now?
I feel like being a human obviously entails being self-aware. I think one of the most important things for humans right now is imagination, that we are actually able to create and bring things into existence that never existed before in the universe. That's why I think all this stuff on manifestation is such a good thing, because I think if that source consciousness wanted to experience itself, I'm sure at some point it wants to create more in creation. So like create characters then can create more other characters and more things. Like we create video games, we create all these things. So it's like our culture, which is just an expression of our imagination and our level of consciousness that allows us to bring things into existence from our mind that we imagine. I don't know where imagination comes from, but I feel like imagination is definitely one of the things that makes us who we are as humans, that we experience this reality.
Yeah, it's almost like that's kind of the point, is to create things.
Yeah.
And from the law of one perspective, it's kind of like the universe is here so that we can. It's kind of like one story I heard. It's not from the law of one, actually. A different story was that everything was created because the one infinite consciousness, whatever you want to call it, or the creator, billions of different names, which I kind of find irrelevant on what we call it. Yeah. Because no matter what you call it, I don't really think it's sufficed. That's not actually what it is. That's why in Taoism they say that the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like that's what's happening here, is that we're just kind of exploring what we can all create. And I think part of the human experience is to figure out how you can access that creative potential, because I feel like a lot of us aren't able to actually access it for a while, because you could say the matrix of society, whatever you want to call it, is distorted. But yet that kind of serves us to evolve or to become the greatest versions of ourselves. You know, I saw in Loki, I don't know if you saw Loki.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. So you remember that part where, this isn't really a spoiler alert, but
is it the show or?
Yeah, the show.
Yeah, the show, yeah.
So there's that part where they're showing Loki his timeline where he died, and they say, you are just designed to help people reach the greatest version of themselves. And I kind of see that it does have a sliver of truth. I don't think it is always like that, because we love the heroes that are anti-heroes. But I think there is a part of kind of what we perceive as negativity as kind of the catalyst to expand, you know?
That makes a lot of sense. I've thought about that also with like duality too. Like negativity helps you realize or go to positivity, or like duality helps you realize unity, or seeing that illusion of duality helps you see the unity behind things, because you couldn't see things as one if you didn't see them as separate, I feel like, because it's like putting them together and then seeing that there's a greater unity behind them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it kind of gives you a reason to want unity in a sense, because if there was nothing but this kind of negativity, or actually if there's nothing but positivity rather, then what would be the point? Because also in the law of one, it says that there were galaxies that didn't have the service to self path or the negative path, and that it took billions of years longer to evolve. And so that kind of just helps me realize that this is kind of a catalyst for a reason, you know?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Like if it wasn't for that, the whole journey would be completely.
What would you do?
Up. Yeah. It'd be boring. I think
they said
too.
that you just, it is. But that's what they were saying. It's like you just sit, kick back and relax. What's the point of evolving? Because there's nothing constantly pushing you.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a fascinating way to see things. And so when it comes to manifestation, though, what do you think are some of the most powerful teachings that you've learned or that have helped you throughout your journey when it comes to creating your own reality or empowering yourself?
I feel like it would be like what you talked about, the like quantum timeline jumping, that you can sort of visualize that reality in your mind, and with a lot of emotion and feeling that you're already there, sort of starts to attract that reality later on. So I feel like definitely it's like you create your reality by just seeing the potential of it in your mind and then actualizing with action in the present so it can come into being in the future or the next present.
Yeah.
So I feel like definitely visualization and then emotion, I feel like, is one of the key things too.
Yeah. I think those are some of the biggest ones. That's when I put out 10 Secrets of Awakening, the first video that I ever made on it was on that topic about, and I didn't even do that on purpose. I was just going in the car, coming to this Airbnb, and I just turned to that page. And I think that's one of the most powerful things I've learned too, is that whether or not we know it, I feel like we are creating a reality. And that's one thing that I try to tell people is that if you just want to let go of control, you can do that. And I think there are ascended masters that have done that. That's just one path where you just kind of live and you let things be as they are. And then there's another aspect where I feel like, especially with the negativity right now on the planet, if enough of us come together and consciously decide this is what we're going to create, won't society start to change as a byproduct? You know?
Yeah. And eventually, like, fundamentally, I think everything does start with a thought. Like, we would never get anywhere or do anything without the thought of it first coming into our mind. So like if all of us collectively, like you said, start on one thought and work our way towards it through action, we're just going to manifest that reality regardless of what happens if we continue to try to actualize it.
Yeah, and I think we just got to get enough people on board to empowering themselves, and I kind of feel like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
You know, but in the cosmos, what even is time? Because you know, there's billions and billions of years, depending on, you know, I had on a couple episodes ago a guy who we were talking about the ancient civilizations, and I know that you've done videos and I've been interested in this as well. So what do you think is some of the most compelling information that you've come across, whether it's ancient civilizations or whether it's just consciousness in general, that really gets you going? Because I mean, for me, you probably know it's the law of one and other things like that, but what are some different topics that you feel like are super important for people to comprehend, you know?
I feel like one of the most important is definitely seeing the connectedness in different beliefs and different religions and even in different ancient civilizations, like seeing that every single civilization fundamentally somehow talked about the same thing. Like right now, I'm sure you're going to love this, and I'm going to let you, like, this book, I know because you love the law of one. This book is a book called the Book of the Hopi, which is basically a book that talks about a tribe, a Native American tribe in the Northwest in Arizona, I think, or Southwest. And they basically have the same philosophy or religion as the law of one. They have these 7 universal kingdoms, 7 densities of consciousness. They say everything started with the creator, in the mind of the creator. They call that the first world. And it was basically endless space in the mind of the creator. And then the creator basically created an instrument to create creation. So like in the law of one, it says first there was infinity, and then there was intelligent infinity, or the force that the energy that basically created everything. It's like a co-creator of the creator. And it's just crazy how whether you go over here in this part of the world or in this part of the world, everyone talks about the same thing. Even in science, like let's say if you go to quantum physics, that says the universe is just underlying vibrations, or like vibrations of quantum fields. And in Hinduism, they say that Nada Brahman, which is just a fundamental reality. They say God is sound, and to them, Brahman, or God, is the fundamental reality. So to them, sound is the fundamental reality. And sound, if you think about it, sound is just a vibration or sound waves. So they're basically saying that vibration is the fundamental reality. And quantum physics says that vibration is a fundamental reality. So it's like everything talks about the same thing, which is just crazy to think about.
Oh, shit, man. It's all here.
It's here. Yeah.
You know, the answers. It's crazy, and I know that there's a lot of distortion in a lot of different things, and I think that's just kind of part of the human condition, that sometimes we get things, sometimes we don't. And it is so interesting to me, and this is definitely a part of what I've dedicated my work to, is to see the interconnectedness of things. That's why for a while there I had linking science, spirituality, and I think it was ancient wisdom or something like that. And it was because I think one of the most important things we can do is start to see these things. It's not just over here in a corner that they're saying this thing. It's like, no. It was said over here, and then over here, and then over here, you know, whether it's Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and even Christianity.
Yeah. Especially, I think Christianity has a lot of stuff too. You wouldn't think it doesn't, because a lot of the dogma on top of it, but I feel like one of the most fundamental things, that God's name is I am. And when you think of consciousness, what do you think? Like René Descartes, the famous French philosopher, said that the only thing you could know is that you're conscious, that you experience reality. And the way that he said it is with this quote that a lot of people, it's kind of popular. It's like, I think, therefore I am. So it's like, I'm conscious, therefore I exist. So consciousness is, or I am, is basically this metaphor for consciousness. And when you think about it, if God's name is I am, then God is consciousness. It's like,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's right there too. And it's crazy because it's all in our faces. People just like, they look at it, but they don't see it. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? Like, I love this in Avatar. If you've seen the movie Avatar, I'm sure, like with the blue people, it's like they talk a lot about that the sky people can't see. It's not really talking about seeing, like looking in the things in front of you, but understanding, like seeing behind it, understanding what it truly is for what it is. Like when you read the book in Christianity, people just look at it, they take the metaphors as facts instead of understanding them as a metaphor that points to a deeper meaning behind that.
There it is. It's insane how everywhere you look, if you look, that's the thing though, is that it's kind of weird to contemplate this concept, to think that some people can't see something, even though they are seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's like belief is such a interesting thing when we start to look at the nature of reality, that if we are so stuck in, or let's just say this, one of the greatest tricks played on humanity is to think that one source has it all. There's that one book or one thing or one place or teacher, when it's, to me, that's one problem that I see with the Bible. Not that, you know, I was raised Christian, and I respect the belief system, but at the same time, it's really hard to catch the truth, to see the truth, or to find the truth when you have something that says that this is the only truth.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why I feel like the dogma is just, but do you think, you would think that that's sort of like a human distortion, you know, that's over time people infringing their own beliefs on what could have been a channeled source of whatever. And then people saying, oh, it happened this way, and this is the only way. That's why I know that you like Taoism, and it says, doesn't it say, like in a book, I think it's called The Way of Life or something like that, it said that this is not the only truth or something like that. And it's like, I think everything is just like, if reality or truth itself was a puzzle, and every little perspective is just part of the puzzle pieces. And it doesn't even mean that if you connect this book in Christianity or the Law of One or this other book, that's just going to form part of this part of the puzzle. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get the whole puzzle piece itself. I feel like it might be impossible to really find the one truth itself for what it is, because we're so limited in our perception of all the things that we can know, at least in this density. But later on, I feel like when we can grasp it all in our expansive consciousness, maybe even through psychedelics too, but like,
it's possible, I think, 200. It really depends on what your definition it all.
Yeah.
You know, because you might have an experience through psychedelics or such where you feel like you are it all, but yet you know nothing except like, what is the ultimate truth? That's like really the question here, because is understanding it the ultimate truth, or being it the ultimate truth?
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like being it will definitely be the embodiment of the truth rather than just knowing or understanding it. Because when you are it, you no longer need to try to understand it because it's your nature. It's built into you. It's what you are.
Yeah, and then the ultimate question then becomes, is the Godhead, whatever that might be, again, is that something that is all-knowing and all-being, or is it just all-being and the all-knowingness is what we are? Or not that we are all-knowingness, but rather the exploration of all-knowingness is kind of what we're doing.
By the Godhead, do you mean like the personification of that consciousness or God? Like, let's say if Jesus is a Godhead, or Krishna, or what do you mean by Godhead?
That's a good question. So for that situation, when I say Godhead, I kind of say I'm meaning the Logos.
Oh, okay.
You could say like the universal mind or something like that. And we see that throughout many different traditions. Like in the Law of One, it calls it the Logos. In the Bible, it calls it the Logos. And there are other mysticisms that I've been getting into. I don't know if you've read like the Torah or a kind of Jewish type mysticism, but I've been kind of getting into that for the first time. And I'm like, oh, it says the same thing. It's just in different context.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for Godhead, it's more like the journey out of source to then return back to source. When you return back to it, is that source there? Is that it? Or is there something beyond it? That's like one of the biggest questions I've always wanted to explore was, is the unified field, what a lot of people call it, God, source, spirit, in the Tao, they would say it's formless. Is that formlessness containing all information within it so that it is all knowing, but it's packed in it's stored in a way that you can access parts of it? Because maybe that's what the Akashic Records is. Or is the Akashic Records something that's stored on each planet? You know, everybody's going to have a different answer for that. But have you explored that concept of the Akashic Records at all yourself? Or?
Yeah, I did look into it. I think it's like incredibly interesting that I'm not really sure what it could be, because if it's allegedly in the astral plane, I think, how would something that contains the knowledge of the entire universe be contained within? Oh, wait, actually, no, because we contain everything within us. So, but it's still crazy to think about how like the knowledge of like, it supposedly says that you could basically open one book or whatever, and every thought of every person in the past, present, future, everywhere would just be there. Like all the information would be available, at least the possibilities of it. So it's just
that was my next question. Was like, is it set in stone then?
No, it's just the possibilities of it. And I don't know, it's just crazy to think. That's when I remember hearing about it. That's what kind of got me into wanting to be spiritual and meditate, because when I heard about that, like I want to access that and bring it down and teach people about it, but I haven't really tried.
You're like, that sounds cool. And then you just kind of do your own thing. Yeah, I get it. I discovered the work of Edgar Cayce, who was one of the most famous people to have supposed tapped into it. And, you know, he had some crazy things. I don't know if you've heard about him and his work, but the medical things he could do, where he could diagnose people by remote viewing them or whatever he might do, that was really intriguing to me. And I kind of find that what I feel like on both of our work is how can we explain non-physical phenomenon? A lot of times, sometimes it's physical, but how can we explain something that we aren't able to perceive ourselves in a way that people might be able to grasp it, and even we might be able to grasp it? You know, do you ever struggle with that?
Yeah, like consciousness, I feel like one of the hardest things to get people to grasp, or like the astral realm, because we can't see it in our everyday perception. Even our consciousness, like that in itself, even though it's so obvious to us, it's like that one story of the fish in the water. It's like the one fish says, "How's the water today?" And the second fish says, "What the hell is water?" And this is the, and he just doesn't know that the most obvious fundamental reality that they're in, it's normally like the hardest to see and to talk about, which I think consciousness is one of them. And obviously, if the Akashic records or the astral plane is somehow like holographically on this or whatever, you can definitely explain this better. But like if it's somehow on our own plane, like how do you explain that? Like, is it just stacked upon like pizzas, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that whole concept is, it's kind of like imagining that there's different realities overlapped upon each other. And it's kind of like phasing. This is an interesting concept. A lot of people might not understand this, but I'm just going to try to explain it. There's a concept. I used to play World of Warcraft many, many years ago. And there was a concept where there would be too many people in a server, so they would phase them into multiple servers all at once. But yet they were still playing the same game, but they phased them so that they couldn't see each other, because the one server couldn't handle the amount of people at that time. I mean, the game is not very popular now, but at its peak, it was like one of the most popular games of all time. And so that's how I kind of see it. It's like there's different phases, and also it's kind of different though, because for our reality, there's different bodies in each phase. So then you have your astral body. And also in WoW or World of Warcraft, there's the spirit world. You got to run back to your body to like release your spirit. You have to release your spirit, then you have to run back to your body in order to get inside of it. And I'm like, that's disclosure in a sense. Like, that's it right there. That's what we're trying to describe. And so in that spirit world, there would be records in it that we just can't access right now, or maybe we're not even supposed to. Maybe that's kind of part of the game.
Yeah, if you know everything, then the game becomes pointless.
Or what's the fun?
Yeah, or what's the fun of it? It's just boring at that point. It's like when you max out your character, you're just sitting there like, oh, I want to just explore this world for a couple more hours, but at the end you're just like, I'm gonna get off. I've done everything. So that's why, like, even in the Law of One, it's like it's great that it has this. I really resonate with the thing that it has octaves. So let's say if you complete the 7 densities and go back to the source. I also wanted to ask you about something else, but I'll ask you about it later. It's like it goes again into another octave or whatever, and it does the same thing, but it's in a different form or a different reality, I guess, or universe or something.
So what's your question then?
Oh yeah.
I'm curious.
Oh yeah. Because like I said in the Book of the Hopi, it has these nine sort of dimensions, if you want to think about it like that. Mm-hmm. And it says the 9th is the source, the 8th is the plan of the creator and the instrument that the creator used. So whether it was the logos or intelligent infinity or this or that. And in the Law of One, does it say that there's the 7 densities of consciousness, and then the 8th is intelligent infinity, and then the 9th is infinity, or is there just 7?
How does it describe it?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting one, because there's actually been different interpretations of it. So from my understanding, and I've seen other people describe it differently, the 7th is like when you, and it says this in Law of One, when you go look, what is the 7th density? There's basically one really good quote, and it's like, you become one with all, have no past, no future, but you exist within all. And that is basically the ultimate state in the 7th density. It's why it's called the gateway density. And then in the 8th is like 8/1st. It's the same thing, because it would be the first of the next. And so you can see that as universes. That would make sense.
Like different universes?
Yeah, but I don't think that's confirmed in the Law of One. That's kind of just my own
hypothesis.
Yeah. Otherwise, what would it be if it wasn't other universes?
Sure. You know, I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to think about, because I feel like it would tie into also I don't know if you've heard about like sacred geometry, like the way that the flower of life is built. sort of, I think, mirrors the way that creation takes place or unfolds. Like first with infinity or a dot, it's just a point, which is basically infinity, because if you're immersed in that point, there's no other space. You're just in the allness. And then the dot basically creates a sphere or a circle around itself. So it's like a circle with a dot in the middle. And that's infinity becoming self-aware. That's when source becomes self-aware. And then it creates a reflection of itself as another circle like this. And that's basically, it also talks about that creates the geometry of light, which in the law of one also says that light is fundamental to creation. And then it keeps on going. And if you pair it with like the days of creation in Genesis, which is supposedly how it's supposed to mirror also, it's like creating different things, first the galaxies first, then like stars, then animals, and like they're all just different expressions of the one source. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That's
I probably need a visual to like show you the little
right.
circles.
I know what you're talking about. The little circles, and then you do two, and you have the Vesica Pisces, and then you have and it keeps going out. I need to do a video on that. I've been meaning to do that for a while. And for me, sacred geometry, I've made videos on the platonic solids, but I haven't made videos on the flower of life. And I feel like that's definitely, I might even do that very soon, because
definitely do it.
Yeah, to understand that geometry is essentially what everything is.
Yeah.
It's like sound. You look at cymatics, sound is geometry.
Yeah.
And the frequencies that maybe even our bodies might be just certain frequencies that we perceive as solid.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Right, because science can't really explain. It can try. Like, why is this? Is one thing solid? You know, what is this table made of? I mean, you can say molecules, right? Yeah. And I was watching with Jessie, my girlfriend. We were watching. There's this stand-up comic who did this set, and he was like, "Nothing makes sense." Like, wait. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Like like nothing makes sense. Like in the Buddhist way, like nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does.
So, oh man, I feel like sometimes I just want to be a comic instead of do what I do, because I'm like, this is such a joke. Like this whole experience, a lot of the times. Now, I mean, suffering, it's hard because then people will say, well, is suffering a joke? And I'm like, you could see it that way. Would it hurt you to see it that way? And that's kind of the essence of our reality.
Yeah, it might make it less like suffering if you see it that way. It's just a play or a joke. It's just a game. I'm just gonna suffer.
Universe game.
Yeah. Yes.
There it is, folks. It just fits right in. But yeah, exactly. And then you have like tarot, which is what the law of one says, that the galactic mind expresses itself through tarot and astrology and the tree of life, and that whole thing, that these are basically expressions of archetypes. So if you were to think that life is a joke or that it's ridiculous and you would actually do that, you'd be expressing the archetype of the tarot. And that's just one way that we can experience reality. And that's kind of how we all just experience everything, and we don't even know it. That maybe I think there's 21 and then 22 is the choice, if I remember right.
For tarot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at least there's the major. I think there's many more than that, but at least in the law of one perspective, that's the way that it is. So, and that it gets really complex. I actually haven't even gotten super, super deep into it, because I think there's even parts for me, and people might be surprised by this, but there's parts I've got to pick and choose. You know, sometimes it just gets so complex that my goal is to understand the whole thing, but I feel like there's important topics to like certain books. Like I'm sure with you with the Hopi book, which by the way, I'm in Arizona, so, and I did a video about the Hopi Indians.
You did?
And that they believed in like with their philosophy. I did a video.
That's so far.
I didn't do the whole like explanation just about them. It was about confirming the sinkhole in that they found over in the east, and I mentioned them. But
even that's like crazy. Like even the stuff that they talk about, that they emerge from inner Earth. Like what? And they have
Right,
like
that's
these,
why I made the video about that, because there was a sinkhole and there was trees like hundreds of feet down, and there's like basically this whole thing down there growing like a whole forest. Like, and then unfortunately I didn't explain it correctly, and I had so many people commenting, but how does it get light though? I'm like, it's a sinkhole. People did not get the concept of a sinkhole, dude. If you go on my Instagram right now and you look at that video, the amount of people that are like, ha, this is BS. There's no light down there. And I'm like, dude,
it's in the title, and it's literally in the title. A hole.
I know. Exactly. But hey, I needed to explain it better apparently. But that's just interesting to me, and yeah, again, I had a guy on a couple episodes ago, Destar Child, and he was talking about, his name's Philip, and he was talking about Agartha. Oh, and also King Cassius was talking about Agartha, if you know who King Cassius is.
Yeah.
In the episode, we talked about Agartha and ancient civilizations, and
I'm into all that too.
So what do you know about Agartha then?
I know that like it's
or
Agartha is
What have you found? Let's say that.
I found, or I remember that Agartha isn't in this place that's talked about in the Hindu or in the Indian stories. This myth of this underground city that's like, especially I think the Buddhists and the Hindus talk about it. And also there's this thing that happened with Admiral Byrd, which is a US pilot, I think, that supposedly flew over either the North or the South Pole and had this whole thing that he documented in his diary, that he basically, like in the Jules Verne's books, he went into inner Earth and met with these Agarthan people and had this whole like experience with this crazy civilization, allegedly.
Yeah, and everybody's like, okay, buddy. And he's like, you know what I mean? He's just like freaking out. He's like, dude, there's these people here. And were they even people? I don't know. I didn't read his stuff completely.
I'm sure,
but I've heard
if you think about it, they could be like, because the Hopi Indians talk about, I mean, all cultures really talk about that there's these different destructions of Earth or different worlds. Like the Hopi Indians have these 4 worlds. First is the creation. The second world is one of the destruction. There's 3 destructions. The first one was like destroyed by fire. And they actually went into inner Earth with these ant people, which is crazy to think about too. Like in their petroglyphs, they show these things that look like aliens that have like ant faces that took them down to inner Earth. And after that, they like basically survived the great destruction of the Earth by fire. And then the second one was by ice. And then the third one by a flood, which is also, all that is talked about in all cultures too, which is crazy to think about. And it's like, I feel like the flood myth is, if it's paralleled in all these cultures, I feel like there's some evidence that they might have happened in the past, you know?
I mean, you got to contemplate it.
Yeah.
You know, if across different civilizations, they all say the same thing. And, you know, then the question arises, was it one civilization that we all had one huge civilization and then it all splintered and they all had the same thing? Or did they all come to the same conclusion? You know what I mean? After experiencing it, that, oh, this happened. And so maybe, I don't know.
Maybe the knowledge disseminated, like you just said, you know?
Right. It's possible.
Yeah. Especially even, I think there is even like archaeological or like geological evidence for it too. Like there's something called meltwater pulse 1b, which is like when the sea level rose like 400 feet within like a couple years, which is just pretty crazy to think about too. That could be what they're talking about in the Ice Age. And even in the Hopi Indians also talk about this thing that the Flower of Life book talks about, Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, that this basically happened because of a pole shift. So like say the magnetic poles of Earth basically flipped, and that caused a change in the weather that brought like a complete change in just everything became frozen or just fire, which is what they talk about. That they said that these 2 gods were sitting on the 2 poles of the Earth, and then they decided to switch places, which is crazy because if that happened supposedly 40,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago, how would they know about that? You know, it's like, could be another civilization, like you said, that had that knowledge and then it got passed down.
Yeah, and then they went inside the Earth, and that begs the question: is there still civilizations in there? And also, what is their light source? Now I gotta ask, because all the people were asking on my comments, what's the light source in there? I wonder if they have their own. Is there another sun in there? You know?
Yeah, people say that, but that's kind of crazy how would a sun, like, I feel like that would completely destroy the planet's surface, you know? Like if there was a melting ball of gas that's hot, or I don't know if it's probably is hot, but it just
Bravo, just a smidge.
But I feel like it would just destroy like everything, you know, in there. Like we would just start melting into it or something.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what mainstream science says now, though, that there's a molten core in there.
Oh yeah.
You know,
maybe it's surrounded by there's something that contains it.
Right. And it could work completely different than what we know. And it's possible. The Law of One says that there's honeycomb Earth.
I was just going to say that. I feel like it's pockets of hollowness. It's not really like
one huge area,
one huge hole. It's just pockets. And that would make sense. And like a light source, if these civilizations, if they do exist and they've been there for thousands of years, they probably developed some sort of light to look around, unless they're like mole-ish and they can see in the dark or something. But
right, that's always possible.
Yeah,
you know, like insects, like ants and stuff like that, have their own tunnels. If they are, you know, like if there really was ant-type people, then the question becomes: are they humanoid-type ant people, or are they just? And that just opens up so many rabbit holes for me.
It does, because allegedly there is an insectoid type of race that's like an alien race. If you ponder on those things that people talk about, there's allegedly one that looks like mantids or mantis, like a mantis. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at the pictures of like what the ant people looked like, I could see him in a mantis. So I don't know. Even like I think Paul Hellyer, the defense minister of Canada, said that there were insectoid people, which is just
really,
which just gets you thinking. I have a video of that. I can show it to you. That's going to be in my next YouTube video, but because I love
I'm like, somebody's got to do a video on that.
Yeah.
Whether it's me or you. That's wild, dude.
Yeah.
So what did he say? He just came out and said that. Is that all he said?
I mean, he's been saying that there are basically aliens that have been inhabiting Earth for thousands of years. He also talked about the Galactic Federation, which another defense minister, the one of Israel, Haim Shed, also says there's a Galactic Federation, which is just two people very high up in the government talking about that. I don't know, it just gives it some credibility. But it's just, even if it's not, just crazy to think about if that could be true or not. And if there is, what does a Galactic Federation look like? I know the Law of One talks about it, right?
It does. And
yeah.
Oh man, it just makes life on Earth seem so futile.
Yeah.
If that is the case. You know, we're just like the peons in Civilization, like Sid Meier's, like the Civilization game, or like Roller Coaster Tycoon. You're just like the little person walking around going on the roller coaster while it's like there's this massive thing happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Star Wars. If you're just like a random person on a planet, your planet could just get destroyed by a Death Star and there's nothing that could be happening. And it just really makes me wonder how much about Star Wars is actually happening right now.
Yeah. Of all of them, like Lilo and Stitch, I have the clip in there in my YouTube video. It's like they talk about in one minute clip, it says stuff about the Galactic Federation. It says something about aliens are all about their rules, which also Paul Hellyer mentions like aliens are really care about rules and not infringing free will, which is also what I think the Law of One talks about. So like they give everyone a choice. That's why a lot of people would say, oh, if they're good, if the aliens are all good, why aren't they helping us? It's because they give us a choice to decide, you know?
Well, what in the hell's going on this planet then? If there's no free will infringed, I was on Brian Scott's podcast. I don't know if you've heard of him. I think he's got like 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he talks about a lot of stuff I do. And on that podcast, we was talking about how he feels like our free will has definitely been infringed upon, and he wants to go talk to somebody. The episode isn't out yet, so you can't go watch it yet, but it will be, I'm sure. And that he literally wants to go in front of a council and be like, this is BS. That this is not okay. That you're basically programmed since birth negatively, and that there's too much distortion. And I kind of played the other side, and I was like, but we don't know what's going to happen here on Earth. It could be a huge mass evolution, and it could be exactly what we needed. But I get what you're saying, that it is kind of annoying how, even we have this conversation today and people are going to be like, okay, buddy. But it's just like, that's the nature of humans. And I kind of respect it because I was there, so I don't get triggered. I don't care. I don't really read stuff about myself that much because, most people online, they aren't going to really know you. They just think that they know you through one video. And it's like, if people are talking that smack, who even cares? Because I could talk about anything. I could tell you that eating carnivore is the best thing ever. And then people are like, okay, buddy. Or I could say the opposite. Eating vegan is the best thing ever. Yeah. People are like, okay, buddy. So it's like, no matter what you talk about,
everyone's going to have their own opinion.
Right.
And they're all going to either be mad about it or agree with you. Mm-hmm. It's all going to vary on everything.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have that phase where you were just like mad about it? Or did you not? Because I didn't have that phase.
I didn't have that phase, but I thought about I had my first phase was everything is a lie. Like I saw a conspiracy movie, probably the best thing I ever did and the worst mistake, because I just saw so much shit that just completely blew my mind, kind of negatively polarized stuff about the cabal and all these negatively polarized things happening, which just I guess kind of affected my mind a little bit. I was like, whoa, if this is really happening, that's pretty fucked up.
Right. You took the red pill.
Yeah, took the red pill, but I guess that led me into everything else. So it's good.
Yeah, I feel like it's analogous to the Matrix in a sense. Not like that. I'm not trying to say that the whole Matrix thing is true, but it is kind of analogous to he wakes up and he has to pull the thing out and realize
it's all
how negative it is. But then he still chooses a positive and to help and get others out. I feel like in a sense, the Matrix did have some truth, that there is a reality that most people live in that is distorted, and it really isn't what's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that there's AI overlords, that whole theory in the movie is correct. Because I actually think rather the opposite. I think that while in this game it might seem like they are, I feel like outside the game, in the spirit world, whatever you want to call it, it's complete love and harmony. And they basically added in a layer, to the Matrix. So what do you think about the Matrix in general? Have you watched the movies, first of all?
Yeah, I did watch. I recently watched it, actually. I'm surprised I hadn't seen it before. And I loved it. I think one of the things I got the most from it is that our beliefs about what we can do can change what we can actually do. Like Neo, when he believed that he could, break the laws of gravity in the Matrix, he actually did break the laws of gravity. And all these things that you can your belief and what you can do dictates your reality. If you really go inwards and I know there's this thing I heard about some Hindu yogi or mystic called Milarepa, in the mountains. He had this, supposedly there's these mountains where there's all these handprints just on the walls that are completely caved in. And supposedly what Milarepa used to do is he used to meditate, and he brought students to look at it, that after he went into within and he internalized the belief that he could, I guess, break the rules of reality, whether it be the structure of mass or the structure of matter. And after that, he would place his hand on the top of the cave on the wall. And after, he would just literally move the stone and imprint his hand on it, as if he could completely break the rules of our reality or Matrix just by believing it internally and reflecting it.
So basically belief is the key to everything.
Yeah.
So then what do you think are, like, when it comes to belief, how do you get there?
Really,
I mean, not that you've been there, like, where you're putting your in the wall yet. That's not what I mean. I mean more like, for you to get to where you are, you had to at least have some sort of perception that you could do this. I mean, you've generated millions of followers, and you live this kind of life where you have empowered yourself. And for someone who hasn't there yet, what are some things that you feel like you've done? You know,
so like emotion really dictates everything. So one of the things that has helped me the most, especially, is, you know, a lot of people like to write things down, whether it be the 369 method or things like that to manifest. But I think the key really is feeling as if the thing that you're writing down or imagining is already happening. So what I would do normally is I put some headphones on, put some loving frequency music, sit down, start meditating, and then see my reality, and then like try to see myself from the first person point of view, and see myself like with the thing. Like, let's say I see myself with, I look at the phone and there's 1.1 million on there, and I'm like so excited and I'm jumping around. And even after that meditation, I also do that in like in this life. I start jumping around, I start singing, just hopping around happily, just letting that intention out into the universe that it already happened, even if it hasn't. Just act like it did, like fake it till you make it, basically.
So are you a good singer?
Nope. That's why I do it.
If you want to, you know, give us a rendition here, we're all waiting for it to come out. I'm definitely not a good singer.
My name is Bruno, so I guess I could. I wish I was like Bruno Mars, but unfortunately,
that's what I was
not.
thinking. I was thinking. That's funny, but I completely get it. Yeah. Writing it down. I just had on Simplifying Sam yesterday, and that'll come out before this, so it'll be the episode before this comes out. She said the same thing: writing things down, and having them. Like that's her way. For some people, it's music. Some people is saying them out loud. But there seems to be something to writing it down and seeing it. And so it's almost like when you're doing this, you almost have to get beyond believing that you're faking it. It's almost like you can't, if you think you're faking it, then you are faking it. So then there has to be this moment where you overcome the belief that it's fake and you're actually in the realness of it. And that's kind of where I feel like the magic is, because that's almost what you're saying with him. When he put his hands there, he couldn't believe that he was faking it. Dude had to believe that it was going through, right? Meow.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like if he put himself in front of a train and he believed he was going to phase out of reality, he had to believe that before it was going to happen. And if not, he wouldn't have put himself in front of a train. If like for whatever person do that, it's like, you have to believe it.
I don't know if I would ever do.
Yeah, I don't think
go that far myself.
Yeah.
Have you known somebody to do that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, because I'm like, that'd be a legit story. I have heard of people who, Indian mystics, who were able to like phase shift themselves and teleport like a portion of their awareness to somebody else, and that's on
crazy.
another level. Yeah,
to someone else's mind, or like just
to physically like appear as a as a spirit in front of them.
Holy shit.
Or like have like project almost. Okay, this is a perfect example. If you've seen, unfortunately, movies were kind of trash, but have you seen the sequels, Star Wars movies 7 and 8, 9?
I've seen, I think, one of them. I haven't seen all of them. I didn't really like. I saw one and I was like, nope. Disney fucked this up.
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
There's still. I mean, the one I saw, I think I saw the last one and it was pretty good. But like, I don't know. I liked my nostalgia with the other ones.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there was in episode 8. There's a part of the movie where old Luke projects himself to basically fight Kylo Ren, but he never touches him. He just evades him, but it really looks like he's there, and he literally tricks Kylo Ren into thinking that he's there. And but at the end, he says, "See you around, kid," and then his projection disappears, and then he's just meditating on a rock, like on a different planet. And that's kind of what I'm saying. That's what I've heard. I don't know the exact names, and it kind of sucks because I wish I could name drop, because I always love to name drop. That way people can look it up. But it just kind of opens me up to, there could be things that we can do, and we can all do, that what if the belief, it can be as simple as that. What if the belief that we can't do is the thing that stops us? Kind of like in the Matrix. He believes there's a spoon, and he says, how did you bend the spoon to the kid? She says, there is no spoon.
That's also crazy, because if it's no spoon, it's like I took it as it's just you. It's just bending another extension of yourself.
Wow.
Like of the Matrix, it's like if we're all one consciousness, if you realize that internally, you could maybe connect to the consciousness that's over there and just sort of fling that rock out of wherever it is, because that's just you, another extension of you.
So it's like you reach through the field.
Yeah.
To kind of move things.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible to think about. Have you studied the holographic universe stuff?
I have the book, Michael Talbot. I read a little bit of it. I still want to look more into it, but I think I did. I know something about, like, I think you made a video on this about the brain being a hologram, how it uses Fourier transforms or whatever. That's what like holograms use.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because doesn't the law of one also talk about at least 3D being holographic, or do they not?
Yeah. The holographic universe, definitely highly recommend that you read that. At least the first couple chapters. Now, you don't have to read the whole book, of course, but really understanding the nature of what holographic universe means. It basically means the entire universe is within you. Because if you shine a laser at a piece of holographic film, like, okay, if I shined a laser at, this is kind of an LED light thing. If I shined a laser at one part of this, the laser would be able to project the entire image of it over here. Just by one part of the laser being projected into one portion of it. So what that insinuates is that the entire image is contained within each part.
The part encodes the whole. I think that's like a Eastern religion type of thing too.
Right. Exactly.
That's crazy. Oh, like Indra's net. Isn't there's something called Indra's net? Where it's like,
yes, dude. I have that in my notes to do a video on the two. Because I get these ideas. I think I first saw that in The Divine Matrix, a book by Greg Braden. Really good book. Highly recommend that too. He gets into that concept of Indra's net and how it's basically the same thing. And he went and he traveled. That's something that I want to do. That's like, the next stage of Nick's Eye is to travel around and go and talk to, like, we're talking about Indian mystics. I want to go there and I want to talk to them myself, and like, see, what are you really about here? Not for me, like, I'm not saying I'm going to be like, your BS, prove to me. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, like, I just want to actually experience, can I get the experience on camera? Can we actually get this so that it's right? I just really want to go there and experience it myself. And, the goal, as many people know who have been listening, is to do this podcast in person. And I think that extends to these other cultures. Like, I want to go there and interview people, because I think there is, like, a lot of people think that if you look at Hinduism, it's so different from Dolores Cannon's work, or Dr. Michael Newton, maybe the Journey of Souls stuff, or Many Lives, Many Masters. And you're going to find a lot of different parallels, but of course they're going to be different in some ways. But you just got to understand that different cultures are going to have their own way of seeing, like we said at the beginning, the same thing
being expressed in different ways.
Right. Exactly. And I saw that you did a video on this is kind of random, but I saw that you did a video on plants. I'm pretty sure this was you. Plants.
Cleve Baxter and his plants.
Yeah, can you go into that for a sec? Because that's so wild to me.
Yeah, it's basically like he used to work for the CIA conducting polygraph tests, which are basically a lie detector test, which take something about your pulse or whatever, not your pulse, but something that measures your electromagnetic or something response. So it's like you can feel if something's alive or not, or how they are. So I think just he put one on a plant, I guess, because he was curious. And he noticed at first that thing was like beeping, going up and down. And he was surprised because it was alive. But the crazy thing about it is that when I think he went to get a match from his like drawer or something, and he was recording all of this previously. And the second he went to get a match, because he thought like, I want to do something to the plant that kind of excites his response to test it more. And even thinking the thought of burning the plant or getting the match instantly created a response in the plant, which is crazy to think about. That's like a non-local interaction between two conscious organisms, either through consciousness or the field or whatever it may be. And even there's one example that he also gives is I think he like dumped these little shrimp in like boiling water that they were alive. And the second that they hit the water, the plants also had an extremely rapid stress response, which is like even every little organism, whether it's a shrimp, a plant, or a human, they're connected in some fundamental level by this conscious field. And their thoughts are just transferring.
Woo! That's like unrefutable. How can you refute that?
That's the thing though. It's like because science is they're really about things that are easily reproducible. It's like you do it one time, I'm gonna do it again exactly the same. If it has things that like it doesn't work this time, it doesn't work next time, they don't like that at all. And a lot of these psychic things, like especially remote viewing, I know you did videos on like the CIA, and I think one of the main reasons that they supposedly stopped the program is because some people thought it was unreliable because you don't have the same results every time, because it's so unpredictable, especially with things like consciousness and psychic abilities. You're not going to get the same result every time. So I feel like that's probably why it was refuted as allegedly by like scientists.
Do you think that they actually stopped?
I don't think they stopped at all. I'm pretty sure they're definitely doing it right now.
On us.
Yeah. They're probably sitting in our room. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But that's interesting because when I was doing the gateway process, and that's something I'm continually doing even on this podcast, they talked about how, well, I haven't actually talked about this part yet, but the Monroe Institute basically said that when you remote view, there's actually different realities that you can remote view into. So sometimes they'll see something, but it's actually like a parallel reality.
That's crazy.
And you can't actually tell if this is the one where it's exactly that way. That's what I heard. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it just really blew my mind because I'm like, that brings up a whole rabbit hole for me that I don't even think a lot of people would think about, which is, were the people, let's say, that wrote the Bible, were they remote viewing in a sense? Because is Revelation the book, is that remote viewing? And if it is true that when you remote view, you might see a different parallel reality, or you might see an astral realm, a different one from ours, then is Revelation actually even the case? Or is that just a parallel reality that was viewed? That's something that Dr. David Hawkins talked about, that the entire Revelation, all of Revelation, was just a lower astral vision, that it actually wasn't Earth. That's not it at all. So then that brings up the question, how much of these books are actually just parallel realities that aren't actually ours, you know? And then there's the whole Mandela effect with, what is that, you know?
And I really wonder how they got all the information, like whether it was remote viewing or whether it was some sort of channeling, like the law of one, like how. And if it was that would make a lot of sense if they saw, because isn't the lower astral supposedly more negative? Mm-hmm. So they saw all these negative things and like, oh, we're definitely going to have that. We better warn everyone and just start everything.
And then is all prediction. That's why I've never been like a doomsday guy. You can probably tell if you've been watching this. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about the same type stuff that I do, that they're very like, oh, it's going to end. And I'm always like, I don't know. I mean, there might be evidence, and I've thought about doing videos on the evidence, like the Fascio Coretti and different cultures that have like fire, like what we talked about before, that there was destruction by fire. There's gonna be this. It's the end of the Kali Yuga. It's the the different cycles.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like we don't really. It's such a hard topic to me because do you want to put people in a state where it could end any day, and then you know what that does? It puts you in fight or flight, and then you feel like you can't even function, you can't even enjoy life. So, how do you feel about that whole concept of do you think the world's gonna end, or what do you think? I mean, I'm not
No,
saying I'm right. I'm
no.
curious.
I think the stuff about, especially, I think a lot of people got that the world is going to end from the Mayan calendar, but that's really just the end of the calendar, and it's the start of another cycle of the calendar. It's not really the world is physically gonna end. It's just the start of a new cycle or a new revolution of it. And I think like you're saying, it's bad for people to think that the world is going to end because it puts it in the flight or flight mode. And also because if the future is just allegedly just possibilities and we manifest them by focusing our energy on them, if everyone thinks the world is going to end, we're going to actualize that possibility and manifest it into existence. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Right, which is why I am thinking about how great gas prices are. I don't want to bring in more because I know so many people are complaining, dude. I'm doing my best. I'm not always there. Sometimes I get annoyed. It's like $5.50 or something, $5.60 here in Arizona, and we've got a Mazda that gets good gas mileage, so I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I kind of do think that there's a level of what we focus on is inherently what we might bring into the future. So I think that's what a lot of people call a new earth in this type dealio, where we start to focus on
love and
what it is that we prefer, that we actually want to experience as humans. And how do you feel about that? Have you done any research, or what are your thoughts on kind of this new earth, or what the changes are that are coming?
I think it's really like what the law of one says, that we're moving into the density of love and understanding, and we're moving closer to that as a collective. And I think every person is just a puzzle piece, or not a puzzle piece, a domino in that collective consciousness towards whatever it's going. So let's say when I started awakening and reading all these things, and I polarized towards this positive love, new earth, that is going to affect another person in the domino set. It's just going to keep going down and down. And I think ultimately we are going towards that, but it's in a phase where it's kind of getting rid of all the negative stuff by bringing it into light. So that's why we may see gas prices, even though that's not even like a crazy thing, but like the wars, stuff like that. It's just bringing that stuff into light so we can surpass it and move into a better earth later on. And I think I remember seeing a video about this being a transition phase, and then 2030 is where this stuff starts dialing down and we start getting into the new earth. But I feel like it's also a vibration that you emit from yourself. So it's the perspective through which you see the world. Like me, I could see it from a point of love and understanding, and someone else could see it from another point, and they're not a new earth, but I'm a new earth just because I see it that way. So it could be even stuff like that. Just a way to see the world.
Yeah. So you're kind of seeing the cycle is beginning from the Mayan calendar. And as it progresses, it continually we get into what some people might call the golden age, the golden race, this kind of heaven on earth type deal. And I kind of see it. Have you studied the solar cycles at all?
A little bit. I think that was in your book, right? Yeah, I think about the sun affects changes on Earth, right? Chemical and other things like that.
Yeah, it affects human bodies and what we do. It literally affects what we do. And that 80% of most important human events happen during a solar maximum. And so
it's crazy.
We're getting up to a solar maximum here. It's coming up. I think 2025 is a solar maximum.
Better go buy some sort of base underground or something.
Why? Why?
I don't
think
know.
It's going to be bad?
I mean, what were the other solar maximums? Were there a lot like throughout time?
Yeah, I think we're on the solar cycle is, I think it's like a 20-year cycle, something like that. Or yeah, I think we hit minimum. Well, I might be wrong on that. Now that I'm thinking of that, I should know it because it's in my book. Good time to promote 10 Secrets of Awakening, folks. You can find the information there. Leave you on a cliffhanger. I mean, I could probably find it in here if I want. Oh, I'm actually. I don't even think it. Yeah, it's in there. It's in like pages 216 or whatever. It's like 270. I think it's chapter 6. I have a whole chapter, External Influences on Consciousness Evolution. I talk about that, but yeah, it doesn't really matter that much. The point is that we're affected by the sun, and so that's sometimes when people talk about, I'm feeling bad today. Sometimes I'm like, have you ate today? Have you had food today? Have you drank water? And also, what is going on? And that actually brings up a good question for you. Have you studied astrology and kind of the nature of how the planets move? And do you think that's legit? What are your thoughts?
I haven't really studied astrology itself, but I think it makes sense, especially because of the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. Like the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm, whether it be astrology and the movement of the stars at the point of your birth dictates your personality, or whether it be, the sun, I guess the processes of the sun dictate human behavior, or whether it be anything really, like how our eyes look like nebulas in space. It's like everything is just a mirror reflection of everything else in the way that it looks. And I also think in processes. Like I remember there's this thing I was so surprised because even though it's kind of obvious that plants, I think they emit oxygen and take in CO2, and we do the opposite. And then also in our lungs, we have like an upside down looking tree thing, which is just crazy because that's just an opposite process as well. The as above, so below. So if that is a principle that holds across all of the universe, then I guess in astrology, it should hold as well, theoretically.
Okay, so very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. This kind of just came to me right now. Have you looked into like human creation and like the genetic kind of manipulation and kind of like the different theories on that, the Annunaki, or were we created by other beings or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely have. I went down the rabbit hole a lot for that. I feel like one of the person that writes about it is Zacharias Sitchin. I think that's how you say it. And a lot of people, I guess, in mainstream archaeology don't like his work, but everyone has their own perspective on it. And I think it is something that could be true, because especially if there's this civilization called the Sumerians or the ancient Akkadians that were there 6,000 years ago, the first people to actually start writing history. And they talk about these Anunnaki gods that supposedly came down and created humanity. And even that myth of creation, and then there's also the myth of a flood, that's also diffused everywhere else. But I think the genetic thing does make sense as well, because there's this guy called John Ramirez. Supposedly he was in the CIA. I'm sure you can interview him like online. You can look up an interview, and
we'll get him on. We'll get him on the podcast. I want to talk to him myself.
But he basically talked about that after Roswell, which is a UFO crash that happened in 1947, allegedly, that the US, there's this newspaper, it says like flying saucer recovered in Roswell, New Mexico. And after that, the US basically said, oh, never mind, we actually never recovered a flying saucer. But that's also another whole conspiracy. But allegedly after that, there was bodies that were recovered. And the crazy thing is that former CIA officer talks about that the bodies, they gathered DNA from them and they compared it to human DNA. And there's DNA from them in our own DNA, which just kind of adds to the thing about us being a genetic mix of alien DNA and human DNA, and that we were somehow created from the evolution to us through alien infringe their like thing upon us, I guess.
So you're probably not into the stoned ape theory.
I love that too.
Oh, okay. Because those kind of conflict a little bit, because they're basically, the stoned ape theory says that we took mushrooms, we ingested mushrooms somehow, through many different ways, and that evolved our brains through at a very, very fast rate. And to me, it's like, were the brains evolved through the Stone Age thing, where did mushrooms evolve our brain, or were our brains manipulated, or the brains of these bodies? Because remember, again, when we're talking about this, we're not saying you were genetically changed. We're talking about the controllers that we're all in. Somebody came in and said, we're going to change these controllers.
Yeah.
You know, so what do you think about the Stone Ape stuff?
I think it makes sense, especially also with the genetic manipulation thing, because our brain supposedly it doubled in size over like 200,000 years, which is just, even though it's a very big gap, the fact that it completely doubled in size after like those millions of years of evolution where it did not make any of those big jumps at all. And it's like, supposedly psilocybin, doesn't it? I think it makes neural connections in your brain, and it gets rid of the fear response after you have like so let's say if you fight a saber-toothed tiger, and then now you're scared and your clan never goes again to fight and like hunt for food. And then you take psilocybin or mushrooms or whatever, and it like rewires your brain to like get rid of that fear response again. So you're able to have more courage and go back out. But I feel like the neural connection thing is the thing that gives it the most credibility.
So do you think that there was evolution, that evolution does exist, or is it more like...
Oh no, I definitely believe evolution exists. I think it's one of the like underlying principles of how the consciousness creates life through the complexification of forms, because evolution works in this way that's like there's variation in the environment, and then I guess nature sort of selects the things that are advantageous. So like the things that are able to survive and reproduce more pass on their genes. So if that's kind of, it makes it seem, even though science doesn't really say this, it doesn't say that it's going towards complexity. It makes it seem like it's going towards complexity. Because I mean, if you look around, we're very complex, and all the other things too.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're talking about like the brain not evolving for a while, then what do you think was like? That's what I'm saying. Was evolution a thing? Because if a brain didn't evolve for a really long time, then would that say that evolution is not true? I'm just asking. I'm curious.
Yeah. I don't think it did evolve. It was at just a slower rate.
Oh, okay.
So let's say like if the psilocybin was just like, it helped evolution to be on steroids or something, like it just completely made the process so much more rapid, and our brains just, it's like we took a little Mario mushroom and we just boom.
That's actually a really good example.
Yeah.
Because it's a mushroom and it's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Did you even get that when you said it?
I didn't. I guess it just came to me.
That's wild, man. That's wild. So when it comes to genetic thing, do you think it was just one group that did it, or was it many groups that kind of came here and messed around, and then there was different types of humans, and then one eventually, like the one that we're inhabiting right now, is eventually like the winner, like we made it?
I think there was definitely different types of humans, especially because of all the other like primates and hominoids of like our species that are already in the past. Like there's just evidence already of different human species that interbred to create what we are now. So if there was a genetic influence from aliens, they definitely, or probably created, I guess, influence and created different races. And I would say, I don't think it was only the Anunnaki, because if in the Roswell crash, they gathered DNA evidence, and the Roswell crash was supposedly these gray aliens, and their DNA is in our DNA, then it's probably different alien species that contributed to this whole thing, if it is true.
Do you think that there's advanced humans out there on other planets?
Yeah, they say that in our future we like become these like gray aliens or whatever. Like there's this other timeline when we already are advanced gray sort of humanoids.
Is that from the Roswell stuff?
No, I think it's from another alien book.
Oh, okay.
I have to remember, but
I'm just curious, like what do you think the human is gonna, so do you think that the evolution of humans eventually makes us grays then?
I feel like it depends, because I think it said that was a possible timeline, like a possibility, but Because doesn't the law of one say that we eventually just ascend into these other densities and we become like either the social memory complex or these other things, which are not in a, I guess, physical form.
Yeah, that when I read that, that's what actually made me start to question uh evolution in this. There's this idea in the spiritual community that we're advancing these bodies um to the point where the body ascends with us. And when you talk about the law of one, the law of one perspective on that is kind of that you have different bodies, but they're all already there and you're just activating them. Like there's the 7 chakra system. Not saying that's all the chakras, but in the law of one, there's 7 rays, 7 chakras, they're energy centers. So when we're activating or we're moving into fourth density, you already have that body within, but you're just reaching a level where they say when you graduate into fourth density that you go up a staircase and the amount of light that you can handle as you're walking up. Yeah, you remember that?
I read it in your book, I think.
Oh,
that was like because I didn't read it in the law of one because I haven't read the whole law of one because it's literally so complex.
Yeah,
there's so much stuff on there. But that would make sense. That's then probably why a lot of people see a light after they die. And then it's how close they start walking towards the light is where they stop on their next spiritual ascension, either fourth density or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you hear so many things about the different light and walking towards the light, near-death experiences and these type things. And, you know, a lot of people used to say that graduation was this big event that everyone, you know, kind of like in Revelation, that everyone goes up into the sky and then this thing happens. But from what I'm understanding about the law of one, it's actually, this is the end of the cycle. So when you leave this body, that's the end of your school, or that's the end of it. But then, interestingly enough, the question was asked in the law of one, will the people who are not in bodies also be able to graduate? And it says yes. So then how does this work?
Yeah.
You know, it's like such a mind boggler, even for me. People consider me an expert sometimes, and I'm like, I don't really, I'm just like, that's where I'm at. I can't even put the words together because it's like, there's so many different paradoxes, especially in the law of one, you know?
Yeah, it's like, especially that, because of the social memory complex thing, if we supposedly progress through incarnating, or if they're not in a form, how would they incarnate into something, you know, and progress?
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking of the concept of Judgment Day, even though I think that's BS. More like the concept that you will or will not graduate, essentially. That's more what I'm talking about. Like I don't see there as being a judgment day necessarily, but rather, did you complete what you came to complete? And if you didn't, then you kind of continue on the cycle. So for you, reincarnation, through your research, how do you feel about it?
I think it makes sense. I feel like it would be a way for that one consciousness to have different experiences. It's like it learns through these different avatars or just conscious entities. And then maybe there's this like, if like the consciousness splits into different souls or whatever, and it gives that soul a free will to have the experiences that it wants to experience, and through different forms and incarnation.
So what do you think it feels like, or what do you think happens when you kind of merge back
into a oneness, or into the
or even to your higher self,
into the higher self? It's probably, the way I think about it, I think it's just identity. There's just beingness. I am, like the oneness of just you feel like you are. That's the only thing that you feel. You don't have like these other objects in your awareness, whether it be things, thoughts, stuff like that. There's just awareness itself, or consciousness itself, just the pure being of existing in just one identity, which is everything.
Right. And that's kind of like when you close your eyes and don't have any thoughts about anything, or you're listening to music.
Yeah.
Now, there might be the awareness of the music, but you kind of get into this flow state where that's what I feel like when you really start meditating, you tap into that where there's just awareness. That's literally all that there is. have you kind of what's your experience with meditation and that kind of thing? Do you meditate or not really?
Yeah,
Or
I try to meditate as much as I can. I think one of the things I love about meditation is I don't really try to meditate. I sometimes do to get into that silence and awareness and just be observant and hear, birds and stuff like that. But I also like to, like, let's say if I read a book or your book or whatever, and I can't understand it, I go into meditation and try to go into a deep meditation, and I start just asking those questions that I didn't understand. And for some reason, like my mind just starts connecting it better. Like if I'm accessing some sort of universal web that's like just sourcing the answers from somewhere. I don't know how to explain it. It's like it helps me connect concepts better when I meditate or come up with new things or realize things. That's the way I use meditation normally.
like you get beyond the conscious mind and
Mm-hmm.
you have access to more information than you might when you're trying to think of it.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, yeah, same deal. I mean, when I sometimes get, I tend to overthink. It's just something that I've
Feeling
dealt
go.
with. Is that I feel like when I'm struggling or something,
Mm-hmm.
I might overthink so much that I believe that the only way that I can come up with a solution is if I think of it in that moment. And what I'm finding through my reference experience through life is that the more that I just sit back and let the answer come to me, as kind of hard as that might be, to just kind of surrender to, I don't have the answer right now, but it'll come to me in some shape, some form, this, that. And then I'll have an inspiration. Like, for example, I was thinking about how I wanted to do another challenge. Like I did the X of the Matrix challenge in January or February, and I really liked doing it. And I thought, well, it's been like 4 months, 5 months, however long, and I think that's accurate, right? 5 months or so. Yeah, it's about 5 months. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's about time to do another challenge. And I'm like, oh, what's the next challenge I want to do? And this is like if you're listening to this is the first time I've ever talking about this. So this is actually something that's upcoming. And then I was walking out in Arizona here, and it was really early in the morning, and I had surrendered. Like I did the process that I'm talking about, where I just said, you know what, I'm not gonna try and think about this. I'm not gonna try and figure out with my mind what to do. I think it'll come to me. So then I just went on a long walk, and it was more of a hike in like the mountains here in Arizona. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I got the name. I know what I want to do. Like out of nowhere, it felt like I didn't even come up with it. It was just like it's like it just kind of came to me like somebody. It almost feels like sometimes somebody has got a microphone in my ear, and they're just like, "Do this. This is the challenge," and you're just like, "Oh," and you think you thought of it, but really, I don't think I thought of it. I think it's something I'm thinking it. I'm realizing that it's not even that it comes from me, and that's something the Law of One actually talks about too. Is that the higher self only helps you when asked. You have to ask in order for it to help you, because it, like we talked about earlier, respects free will.
Free will, yeah.
So it's like you just ask for help, and so this is kind of the archetypical. Back in the day, people would ask angels for guidance, and now, for at least from the Law of One understanding, it's like you just ask for help from any beings that you feel like asking for help from, and your higher self or whatever it is, and then things just tend to come to you. And it's been so hard for me to actually do that and consistently not be like, I gotta figure it out, because sometimes it feels like there's a deadline, there's all this, but things just happen to come to me, you know.
That sounds a lot like the Wu Wei thing, like non-forcing, letting it just come to you naturally. And have you ever thought, what do you think the intuition is? Because what I've thought about it, I think about it like messages from angels or just our higher self that are like very, very subtle, but they're there when we need them. And sometimes we listen to the ego and sometimes we listen to the intuition, but it's always there in the back of our mind, just trying to show us the right path.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this voice. I kind of imagine it as there's this microphone, there's this being, or the rest of you could even think of it as, because essentially it is you in another form. And it's outside the game, and it's kind of helping you. And it's like when you're super in your conscious mind, it's like the awareness is turned down. It's like it's at 5% volume, and your conscious mind is at like 95% volume. And then when you do things like what I just talked about, where you're just kind of go into nature, you connect to nature, which actually another thing that it does is it helps to lower your brainwave states with the Schumann resonance, and it gets you down there. And when you lower your brainwave states, it's actually known to have access to intuition. And then what happens is that volume of the conscious mind starts to go down. This is why, again, I had Sam on. It'll be last week when this comes out. She said tapping was one thing that she does to get beyond her conscious mind, or breath work, these type of things. It's all kind of the same thing, that the intuition is something that's here to help, and it gets turned up once you turn down the conscious mind. It's so weird because a lot of times we think the conscious mind is us, but we're actually beyond the conscious mind. And then the conscious mind is just a construct created by the subconscious mind. And then it just keeps going, you know?
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like, how do we turn that on? If it's always there, why is it so low? Like the intuition, why couldn't that be our conscious mind itself? You know,
because the game would be too easy.
Oh, that's true.
That's my theory, at least.
Yeah.
Because if you just had somebody telling you the answers in your ear all the time, like, just do this. You want $1 million, just go to this space. Go here, talk to this person in the grocery store. They're going to give you a job. That's going to get you here. 2 years later, stay there, and you're going to do that. It's just like, that would take away the adventure.
And the journey of it.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's going on and how to get to that next step. And that's kind of what life is. And it sometimes it really sucks, and it does, and I've been there. Sometimes you're like, this is great, like I finally have gotten to the place. And then you realize that you may have gotten to the place externally once you've changed your conscious mind, or what you thought you were, or actually subconscious. You're changing your subconscious. I mean, have you done a lot of research on the subconscious and conscious, or have you explored that?
Not really, no. Just I know Carl Jung, doesn't he talk about subconscious mind a lot?
Yeah, he talks about the unconscious, and then he goes even deeper into like the collective unconscious, and how basically archetypes, the same thing that the Law of One says, ironically, that archetypes are basically the way that we experience reality. Then he has his own version of the archetypes, and that we're all unconscious of them, but they're there. And it's kind of like, these are the different ways to play the game, in a sense.
Have you thought about, like, I remember I read something that really resonated with me in your book about how the way that the one consciousness experiences itself in different forms is because of the vibration of the physical body that contains a certain amount of awareness or consciousness. How do you see that? Do you think it's all just different vibrations for that consciousness to be able to express a certain amount of awareness?
Yeah, so the way that I would see that would be, if you look at the work of Dr. David Hawkins. Have you studied his work at all?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
Okay. Well, it's really good. And he talks about basically that the human domain has a frequency of 1 to 1,000. This is what humans can experience. And 1,000 is essentially enlightenment. And so our bodies can only contain so much of even enlightenment. And that, I think archangels calibrated at like 50,000, which is way over 1,000. And it's like, our bodies, the physical body, literally cannot handle anything more than that. So that kind of tells you that, well, what if we're only meant to experience a certain amount of frequency within, and then everything is that kind of that frequency. And so the human experience is kind of increasing your frequency, which ironically is an inclusion of the negative too, because you're transcending it. It's like the different states of consciousness. The negative was it's like the life taking. That's how I kind of see duality, in a sense, is that there becomes a level where you can see out in the world, there's life taking forces, and then there's life giving or life affirming forces. And that essentially we need to have that. Like, if anybody says that they transcended duality, like, I don't know if that's true, bud. Yeah. Because duality, you can't really transcend it in the human form completely. No. You know, because
philosophically, but not
right.
Just, yeah.
Because you have to have duality for anything to experience. If there was no duality, you would have left the body.
Yeah.
You know, because there has to be separation between me and you, even have this conversation, or else there would be complete oneness, which is what we talked about before with the sacred geometry, the period, right? That
dot.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that duality helps you see unity, at least for us. Like if I didn't see you as another separate character, I couldn't see you as one. Like it helps me see when I realize your consciousness is the same as mine, or your identity is the same as my identity. It helps us see that oneness, that distortion of oneness helps us see it.
It helps us even know what it is, to me.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't know what one was unless you knew what two was.
Yeah.
Because there would be nothing but one. So, and that's why it says that in the law of one, you know, here we go again, that infinity basically one turned into two, and then two expanded into manyness, and the exploration of manyness is infinite. Like it isn't going to end. So that's why when people say, well, what's beyond this? And I'm saying, it's just more of this. It's just more of the present moment, and it's going to continue forever, because really awareness is
the present,
to me, the present moment. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever go ahead.
It's just the experience, and experience only happens in the present moment. You're never in the past or in the future, only when you travel in your mind, which is not really traveling. It's just either memories of something that happened in another present, or futures that have not happened that may happen in another present. So
right.
It's always just now.
Yeah. And where are you experiencing that from?
Consciousness in the present.
Right. You can't actually leave the present moment. You can project your consciousness from the present into the past, but you're still here doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't actually escape the present moment, because even if, like, let's say you went to the future, would that now be the present moment, or is that still the future?
That's just the present. I mean, the only experience is the present experience. You could call it the present, but the future, but it's still going to be the present for you and for everyone else that might travel to the future. And when you think about it, it's like, if this moment is eternal, then we are actually living in eternity right now. Like people that say, I want to die to experience the eternity in hell, in heaven, not in hell, in heaven.
Who you been talking to?
Oh, no. You don't want to know, man.
Cut that out. Cut that out. Somebody cut that out.
But like in heaven, eternity, this is it. We're experiencing it right now. This is the present moment. It's like, I remember, have you seen, oh, dang, I'm trying to remember the movie name. It's like they're different stories and different animations. Oh, it's such a good movie. I'm going to try to remember it. But
if you don't remember it now, just tell me later and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah. And it's like there's this thing that it says, like, time is just a constant saying no to God's invitation to experience eternity. Like when we think about, oh, I want to be there, I want to be here, it's just you're never experiencing that present moment eternity, which is always here all the time. We're always immersed in it. That's the only place we'll ever be. But we're always constantly saying no. Oh, I'm thinking about the future, or I'm living in my past in my mind. So it's like, it's always there. And if this is also infinity, like if reality is the infinite consciousness, this is infinity and eternity itself. Maybe we're just not perceiving it, you know? I don't know.
That's it, folks. Again. So, oh man, that's a mic drop again for you. So I got two more questions for you then. What is the meaning of life?
I think life, I feel like there's different answers to it, because I feel like life is itself its own meaning and its own purpose. But I feel like we are also the things that bring meaning onto life. Like maybe life has no inherent meaning, and we are the meaning, and we bring it onto life. I know like Joseph Campbell talks about that, but to me, I feel like everything is the meaning of life also, because the meaning can be found within everything. Like that flower represents the entire universe holographically. The universe is there, or in us. And it's like, it's just this experience that we're constantly in. That's all.
What an answer. What an answer. That's incredible. I'm going to have to watch that one back myself. We are the meaning.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so here's the last question for you then. Let's say that you got picked up by your boys, the Greys, and they said, you know what?
Oh no.
Why don't you come on? Why don't you come on over here for the rest? We need you. We need your brilliance over here on this planet. And you never got to come back to Earth. Now, what would be the last thing that you would say, or that you had one last message that you could give everyone on the planet before you took off? You never came back. You never talked to anyone on this planet again, unless they came there. You know what I'm saying? So, what do you think you'd say?
It could probably be learn, live, and love. Just that's it. Just very simple.
And there it is. There it is. Thanks for coming on, my friend. It was a great podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Of course. And so, what do you got going on? You got any new stuff? You got any courses? You got any books? Or where can people find you and that type thing?
Well, my TikTok is Indigo Bruno, same as everything else. My Instagram, my YouTube. I'm going to post a YouTube video about aliens. The thing I talked about of Paul Hellyer talking about the insectoid races. It's basically like high government officials disclosing things about aliens. So like all the different disclosures. And that's going to be a YouTube video. Other than that, I'm thinking around trying to work towards writing a book. Just connecting the thing about just that everything is, that bigger puzzle piece or that bigger puzzle. And we're just trying to connect every little puzzle piece, whether it be religion, science, law of one, all these different things, and seeing how they connect into a bigger picture of reality.
All right, we'll keep a lookout on that. Let me know if you do end up completing that. I'll put it down in the description so people can check that out. And I think you're going to do it, dude. I can see you writing many books so far. I mean, I'm surprised you don't have one yet, because there's already so much wisdom, and you already have, probably like many books within, with this podcast could be a whole book, if you explored all the different topics that you talked about, so.
I have a lot of writings down. I just have to actually compile it into a little actual book,
Oh yeah.
Always right.
You'll get there. All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you. It was awesome. And check out Nick's book. It's right here.
Oh, he's got it.
I got it.
He's got it, folks.
That's how you know it's good, my people. It's right here.
10 Secrets of Awakening. Find it on Amazon now or in the description. What did I do with my? Oh, okay. Here it is, folks. Yep. See that there? What is it about? Secrets to understanding consciousness, life transformation, and self-realization. Check it out now.
Double knowledge.
I appreciate that drop.
I had to do it for you, bro.